Welcome to another Invested series, and it's great to have you viewing us today. With me, I've got Ian Duncan, Senior Product Analyst from Housing New Zealand. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you, David.
Before we crack on though, I wonder, what's the story of this picture at the back over here?
Well, it's just a band that I've followed for the last 30 years, really, slightly obsessively, unfortunately. Everybody who kind of knows me well know I'm pretty obsessive about it. You know, I've got almost everything on vinyl and cassette and CD. I've seen them live about 16 times. So it's just become a little bit of a side project for me, unfortunately.
And of course the band's The Wedding Present.
The Wedding Present from Leeds in England, yep.
Excellent. And like me, I enjoy a good live concert, so it's great to be able to have a bit of a passion outside work. We're here to talk about First Home Buyers Subsidy, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's linked to KiwiSaver. So why don't you tell us a bit about it? Kind of, you know, how it works and what are the real benefits for New Zealanders wanting to get in their first home?
Well, the first thing, David, is it used to be called the subsidy. It's now called the homestart grant.
Great.
So it's been changed since April 2015. And fundamentally, it's really money from the government to help you maximise your deposit as a first home buyer. Obviously, you've got to meet some criteria to qualify, but fundamentally, it's relatively simple. If you have been in KiwiSaver for a number of years where you've contributed and you meet some of the key criteria, then, you know, if you are going to buy a house, then the government can help you with a kind of a free subsidy / grant.
Great, so we're talking about the government's going to give you some money to get into your first home, and I guess there's some qualifying criteria around that. Talk us through that. Yeah,
I mean, fundamentally it's aimed at first home buyers, but it's about aiming for people who are earning a certain income or below. So we're looking at for single purchasers where they buy a house as an individual, they've got income of $85,000 or less in the last 12 months. Where you've got two or more purchasers, it's $130,000 or less. I guess the key part of the criteria is that you have contributed to KiwiSaver,
right,
as opposed to just being a member. So I guess the government want to see that you've made the effort to save towards your retirement. You also have to be buying a house within a certain house price point, which is obviously part of the challenge as well. But you know, I mean, there are other criteria, but fundamentally, if you keep to those kind of main ones, you'll be pretty close to qualifying.
Well, it's going to be pretty hard to save if you're not making contributions. So that's a good one to remember. In particular, you know, no one likes doing the paperwork on this type of stuff. What are the kind of messages you want to give to our viewers today that would help them plan better before the actual perhaps event or when they buy their first home? Because it's a pretty stressful thing, right? And if you're wanting to get or need to understand how much money you need to buy your first home, this would be a component of it, yep, I suspect. So what are your tips there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like any first home buyer, they need to do some research and some homework, you know. So I think from a KiwiSaver perspective, they're looking at starting at, you know, go and speak to your KiwiSaver provider to find what kind of balance you've got there, how much you might be able to withdraw, and I guess if you are eligible to withdraw. Then I think from the grants perspective, I think if you can apply to us for a pre-approval, which is valid for 6 months, so it kind of takes the whole guesswork out of the process. So. Right. Unfortunately, quite a number of clients tend to self-assess that they're eligible when potentially they might not be. So I think if you can apply to Housing New Zealand for the pre-approval of the grant, then it does take that whole guesswork out of the process. So we will tell you if you're eligible or not, how much you're eligible for, and even if you're not quite there, we can give you an indication of how long it's going to be before you might qualify for the grant. Well,
that's pretty useful, isn't it? Particularly around planning. And like I said, buying your first home has got a number of challenges along the way and other stakeholders. So it's pretty important that I guess their real estate agent and their solicitor need to be part of this process as well.
I guess at some point they do. I mean, you know, we do see quite a lot of clients who apply for like pre-approvals through their solicitors, which is fine. I guess there's a cost to that.
Right.
I think if you're going to apply for a pre-approval, you can certainly do it yourself quite quickly. You know, you can apply for it online through the Housing New Zealand website. You know, so it's quicker, it's safer. And ultimately, we only need 2 or 3 pieces of supporting documents for us to get the pre-approval done.
That's pretty awesome. And I guess the other thing that you do need to be thinking about is contacting your KiwiSaver provider, because you're going to be eligible to get most of those funds to go towards your deposit as well.
And I guess when you've got 2 people or more buying a house together, the fact that they can then, you know, pool together the KiwiSaver withdrawal amounts and the deposit and the grants, they've got a significant deposit at their disposal.
And it might be surprising. We know it's so hard to get into your first home, obviously, in this case. But this does and is intended to help people get a bit of a kickstart, isn't it? To get started and to get something from the government that will help them, I guess, get into their first home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess, whilst it's difficult in some markets out there to buy that first home, and obviously that's going to be restricted by the value and what you can afford, obviously.
Of course. Now, I'm also thinking around through this process, life brings along some little lumps and bumps, and we have changes in our relationships and our, I guess, other events that can possibly change where we're living. Talk us through, because I hear a lot of talk about the second chance home buyers opportunity. What's that about?
I mean, fundamentally, again, it comes down to, as you said, people change their circumstances. Whether it's a case that there's been a marriage split up, or whether there's been a problem with the business. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons why people fall out of home ownership. The key thing is that once they have, they're no longer owning an interest in property, and they've never withdrawn their KiwiSaver before, then they can still potentially qualify to withdraw those funds to buy a house to get back in the market.
Right. Now, I think you hit the nail on the head there, that if they've never used their money in KiwiSaver before for their first home, they may be eligible, which will probably have a bit more criteria, but all jokes aside, I mean, that is quite a serious kind of time in your life. So it's important for, I guess, New Zealanders to understand that they can't just double dip, if you like, back into KiwiSaver to get some more money that they, to go towards their home.
Absolutely, and I guess the good thing is that the legislation has changed over the years, and it's made it much simpler now to apply for this kind of withdrawal process as a previous homeowner. So when they apply to House New Zealand in the first instance, all we are really looking at is their level of realisable assets, and as far as I'm concerned, that's really all we're going to look at. Then once we hopefully issue a letter, they can go off to the KiwiSaver provider, and then hopefully be able to withdraw their funds.
Ian, thanks so much for taking your time today to tell us a bit more about getting into your first home.
No worries.
If New Zealanders want to get more information, where would they go? Do you have a call centre number that you can give us?
Yep, we've got a call centre. It's 0508 935 266. Alternatively, either the Housing New Zealand website, or there is a standalone KiwiSaver-homestart website that can be accessed. And it should give you all the information you possibly need.
Great, and we'll show that on the video as well. So, hey, look, thanks a lot for coming in today. Hope you enjoy the next concert, and we'll catch up with you later.
Thank you.